Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Regina. I'm from UMA, and I will be giving a talk today about what you can build with synthetic asset tokens. So UMA is also a sponsor of this hackathon, so we'll be offering 3 bounties to teams that create the most creative or innovative use of synthetic asset tokens. The synthetic asset token project with the most potential for mainnet DeFi adoptability. And then also a joint bounty with 0x for the most creative use of 0x instant as well as a synthetic asset token. So we've got 4 people from our team here with the hackathon today. That's me on the left, Hart Lambert, Matt, who is here, and Roz Stengel, who, was here. So if you have any questions following this presentation, you can always reach out to us on Twitter. Those are everyone's handles. And then you can also visit our website or our GitHub for more information. High-level overview of what UMA is and does. We're a decentralized financial contracts platform. So that means that we provide the technology to create these kinds of financial contracts. That consists of 2 parts, smart contract templates, as well as a oracle with economic guarantees. So because UMA is really focused on universal market access, one of the core types of products that we've been focused on are synthetic financial products. This means that we have financial products that can reference external or real-world assets without requiring anyone to actually hold on to those physical assets. As a result, there's a need to have information from the real world somehow transported onto the blockchain, which is where UMA's oracle comes in. Today, I'm going to talk about what synthetic tokens are. I'm going to demo how you can actually use our dApp called the Synthetic Token Builder to build your own synthetic tokens. Talk a little bit about what other people have created with this contract template so far, what you can make. I have one idea that I have actually put in the slides, but we can also brainstorm others. And then lastly, I want to make sure to leave time for Q&A in case you guys have your own ideas or you have some questions about how you could use or adapt the synthetic token template to your own project. Synthetic tokens are really familiar, or should be, hopefully. You can think of them as tokens pegged to a particular price index. So they're a token where the token value is backed by collateral that's in a smart contract, usually over-collateralized. And the amount of required collateral is determined by a price index. And that price index that I've highlighted in blue is really important because that's where the information from the real world is being transported onto the blockchain. And so we've actually seen a couple of examples of synthetic tokens before on mainnet. So some of you might be familiar with Synthetics, which is another platform where you can deposit S and X, which is one kind of collateral, to create a synthetic Bitcoin, for example. Or you might have seen MakerDAO's DAI, where you can open a CDP, deposit ETH, which is a volatile asset, to create a synthetic USD, which is a stable asset. Lastly, UMA worked together with a couple of partners earlier this year to create a US stocks token in which you could deposit DAI to create a synthetic stock index token. And so the synthetic asset token template is super general. And in theory, you should be able to create tokens that track the price of anything. So long as you have the right price feed and so long as you can think of the right type of margin currency or collateral to put inside your token facility, you can create tokens that track anything. And that last bullet point is just to drive home the message that here we're talking about synthetic tokens. So this means that these token holders have price exposure to the price feed, right? So let's say the price feed for the synthetic token is Bitcoin USD. The holder of that token has price exposure to Bitcoin USD without ever actually having to physically hold keys that correspond to actual Bitcoin. So this is another graphic representation of what I just described, right? So you've got a token facility. You've got a token facility here, which is this box. And inside that token facility, you've deposited collateral, right? So that's what this total collateral is. Of that, a portion is being used as backing collateral. So let's say you wanted to create synthetic gold token. And let's assume that the price of gold was $100 per ounce. What you could do is you could deposit 150 DAI, say, into a token facility, and then create a token that's backed by 100 DAI, right? So then you'd have a token that kind of reflects 1 ounce of gold. What we have here is you've got a required collateral amount. So this is very similar to any other kind of over-collateralized lending facility that you might have seen with CDP, where you've got to maintain, say, 120 DAI in order to create these tokens worth 100 DAI. Well, if the lower limit is 120, you should probably top up a little bit more, have, say, 130 DAI in your token facility. And that's the good case, right? So of course, what happens in the bad case? You have a liquidation process that's very similar to what you might have seen before. In this picture, you can see, you've got, again, this amount of total collateral, right? So it goes up to here. But because the actual price of gold, as is being piped into the smart contract, has changed, you can see that the actual required amount of collateral you're supposed to have is up here. You have a shortfall. So what happens in this case? We have some penalty of the excess collateral on top of your backing collateral that gets paid out to the owners of the synthetic tokens, and then the whole token facility unwinds. So you, as a token sponsor who created this, you get to withdraw any remaining collateral that's in there. The tokens get redeemed, and there's no more collateral in the token facility. So it looks fairly simple, I'd say, in this diagram, and we've done that on purpose, meaning we've tried to make this product really simple and easy for token sponsors to understand, especially for people who are thinking about potentially opening up one of these positions. As a result, one of the potential features of this product is that these tokens are not fungible between token facilities. We can discuss a little bit more about why we chose for that to be true, but I just want to highlight that as one of the features of this template. Okay, so how do you create these synthetic tokens? I'm going to try to do a demo using our token builder right now. It's on RinkB testnet, so you will need RinkB ETH as well as DAI. And we have links to those faucets on our dApp. So let me try to open up the dApp and show you what that looks like. Okay, so when you come to this page, I've already done this before, so I've got a token facility up, but let's open a new one. Here you're going to see you're going to get to choose the price index that you want the tokens to track. So in my example earlier, I talked about a token that tracks the price of 1 ounce of gold, but we could choose one of these. Our team has curated this list of 10 price feeds, so we really don't want you to feel constrained by what's on this dApp. And you can talk to Matt or Roz later about potentially using a different price feed. But for now, let's say I wanted to create a token that tracked the price of Tesla. I'm going to pick that. I'm going to say that the tokens will expire by the end of the year. The reason these tokens have to expire has additional financial engineering context behind it that we can discuss later. But what this expiration date means is that before the expiration date, only the token sponsor can buy and redeem these tokens against his own facility. At and after the expiration date, anyone who holds the token can automatically redeem it back against the token facility for the amount of backing collateral that was in there. I had a conversation with someone earlier today about how you can think of this as somewhat analogous to the kind of staking or kickback feature that they had for ETH Waterloo, where you had to deposit sort of $20, and then at the end, at expiry, right, you can come back and redeem it. It's a little bit similar to that, but we can discuss that in more detail. And so now I'm going to launch this token facility. What that means is and of course, remember, you need this testnet ETH. But what that means is, remember my diagram before? I had those 2 rectangular boxes. Right now, what's happening in this step is I'm just setting up those boxes with the right parameters. And once I actually set up those boxes, that's when I can begin to fund them and then borrow tokens from them or close out my positions. So I'm going to let this go. Oh, there we go. So right now, I've actually created those rectangles. I'm going to do this just so that I can begin, putting DAI and borrowing tokens from it. And then at the end of this, what you'll see is actually that I'll have borrowed some tokens from the facility, and then we'll get to see what kind of risk I have. So how much DAI would I like to collateralize? Well, I can see that the current price of Tesla is about $337, right? So let's say I wanted to create one of these tokens. I see that the minimum over-collateralization ratio is 110. So that means at a minimum, I need, say, like 370 DAI, right? But to be safe, I'm going to put in like 400. And I'm going to create one token, right? And you can see it's already doing that calculation of me. It's saying that I could do only up to 1.07. So let's do that. And now in this transaction, what I've done is I've put in collateral into my facility, and I'm borrowing one token from it, okay? So actually, quick show of hands, after this is done, who thinks that I am long Tesla? Who thinks that I'm short Tesla? Okay, that means that you're all right because the answer is neither. The answer is actually I don't have any Tesla risk exposure at all. So if you look here, what happened is I have this token facility, right, where I put in a bunch of DAI. I borrowed one Tesla token. So holding the Tesla token makes me long Tesla. But I have this token facility out there where I actually borrowed the token from, so I'm short Tesla, so net I'm flat. Okay? So what do you do now if you're a token sponsor? Well, if I wanted to get short Tesla, what I would do is I would sell that token to someone else. Right? So I'd go out and try to find a counterparty who maybe wants to get long Tesla. Where am I going to find that person? This ties back into Uma's overall vision of universal market access, right? Say there's someone out there who maybe is, I know the trope is that people are unbanked, but say there's someone out there who doesn't have access to a traditional retail brokerage, whether they're in the US or somewhere else or for whatever regulatory reasons, right? Maybe not in the US, but say there's someone out there who wants access to this. Well, now we've tokenized Tesla into this synthetic token form, and you could potentially give that to someone. And that will give you short Tesla exposure and them long Tesla exposure. So that's an example of one potential use case of this kind of technology. Again, this is all on Rinkeby testnet. It's not on mainnet. So I will say, like, the example I gave is not directly applicable today, but hopefully it inspires you to think about what kinds of products you could also create. OK, cool. So, sure.
In order to sell, suppose you did just that and you wanted to sell your short, sell your long Tesla token to someone else, is that on the Ethernet Ethereum blockchain?
Yeah. So that transfer of the token to someone else you could see on Rinkeby on Etherscan.
So it's ERC20?
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I should have made that super explicit.
You created your own through that method. You created a new ERC20, or is this an existing ERC20?
Created a new ERC20 token. Yeah, so it's a new contract. The address of the ERC20 token is the address of your contract you just deployed.
Cool. So just to repeat for the mic, it's a new ERC20 token. Cool.
If you go back, it's in the dApp. It'll show you.
Should I go?
Oh, then go to manage position.
OK.
And you can go to details.
This or here.
Right.
Here.
Yeah. Should say here.
Etherscan.
Yeah, there's an Etherscan link. So if you there's an Etherscan link. If you go under details, Etherscan link, that's the contract right there that you're looking at.
Cool. So we can help you debug stuff afterwards too. OK. I do want to make sure we have time to talk about some other cool applications you can use with this template. So what have other people created using this template so far? Going back, there were kind of two main things in that dApp that I could pick from, right? I could choose the price index I wanted to track, and then also I could choose the margin currency. That wasn't exposed in the dApp, but that's another cool toggle that you can play with when you're designing your own synthetic tokens. And then lastly, of course, all this adds up to a project that you're working on, so it has some application to the end user that you want to serve. So the idea is, you can pick a flavor. So Tom Schmidt from 0x created a really cool synthetic token that he called BARF, Bay Area, I think, what is it? Real Estate Fund. And it's like a synthetic REIT, if you're familiar with REITs in traditional finance. So in that case, he chose a reference price index of the Zillow median SF housing price. He chose a margin currency of DAI, and that could maybe be a hedge for SF residents, right? As the cost of housing goes up, maybe they hold this token that hopefully gives them some appreciation in case they have to pay more in rent. We also saw a really cool project at ETH Boston called SwanDai. And this was a token that tracked the difference between the DAI USDC price and 1, and it was margined in USDC. So basically they were saying, well, if DAI breaks its peg from 1 US dollar, which we're approximating with USDC, the token should go up in value. And if it stays very close to the peg, it should really be worth close to 0. So what is an application of this? Well, if you're someone who really thinks that DeFi is going to fail and that the Maker project is doomed and that DAI is going to break its peg, you can put your money where your mouth is and buy this token. And if you're someone who really believes that DAI is going to be stable, you might be willing to sell that kind of tail risk in exchange for a little bit of income today. So what can you create, right? I want to do a little bit of a demo-ish. Let's say I wanted to build a crypto Robinhood, again, on testnet, emphasizing everything's on Rinkeby. What do you think I would pick as my reference price index? As my price index, though. Perfect. So I would pick some on-chain or off-chain assets. I would pick maybe the price of Tesla stock, or I'd price the price of another stock, or basically some kind of real-world asset. The margin currency, sure, I'd probably pick a stable coin. USDC is great. And then the application is maybe, I'm maybe running my own exchange where I want people to trade these things. So maybe I'm running like a crypto NYSE type situation. Or maybe I actually have a wallet and I want to enable the users of my wallet to be able to buy into these kinds of types of exposures. So we got it, right? One other cool idea I want to throw out there is you could have the margin currency be an interest-bearing stablecoin. So not only could you then have the price appreciation of whatever stock you're looking to track, you could also potentially earn some additional interest from using CDAI instead of DAI. But that, I think, is the kind of stuff that we're hoping inspires you and gets your creative juices flowing. Okay, so now we're going to transition a little bit to talk about what technically happens behind the scenes. Hopefully answer some of your questions earlier. But that synthetic token builder I showed you, that dApp. So remember, everything lives on testnet and Rinkeby, right? But what I was doing was on the first couple of pages, I was defining the parameters of my synthetic token builder. And then, token facility. Then I deployed the contract, right? And that launched this token facility on testnet. Once I had that, I was able to then deposit collateral and borrow tokens, and then eventually, hopefully, trade them with someone. So if you're looking to customize your own synthetic asset tokens, what are you going to do? Step 1 is probably going to be to change the parameters. The rest of this flow probably will look very similar. And so the main thing that I think is the area where you can add your own twist is when you're defining the parameters. I will say you could also try to think about what are some creative ways that we can get people to trade those tokens. But on our end, I think this is one of the areas where you can add a lot of your own innovation. So when you're changing those parameters, basically you'll see this struct with a bunch of parameters. And these are the 3 that I highlighted before that you'll want to think about changing. One is the price feed that you're tracking, one is the margin currency, and the last is the expiration. And if you have any questions as you're doing this, I do want to emphasize Matt and Roz are here, and you can ask them for more technical help in debugging any issues you have. But otherwise, you should please come talk to us at our table. You can follow us on Twitter. So that's Uma, and then that's me. Visit our website. And then if you scan that QR code, which hopefully people know how to do, you'll see more information on our talk schedule. So this talk, as well as a talk that Hart Lambert, our co-founder, will be doing tomorrow on our solution to the Oracle problem, as well as some tutorials and links to documentation on how you can build your own synthetic tokens. And lastly, of course, info on our prizes. Cool. Any questions?
Could you explain more about how the custom indexes work? Because when I was doing
In the dApp?
yeah, when I tried using playing that last night, after creating a token facility with a custom index, it wouldn't let me specify
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah, so I will say the dApp is something we've used in a bunch of different contexts. So I think one thing to clarify is that those price indices that you see on the dApp, the ones with names make sense. The custom ones were ones that we used to give people at a hackathon the ability to say they had created a token without actually setting up their own price feed. But now we have actual tutorials on how you can set up your own and use them with your own contracts. So I would encourage you to look at more of the CLI tutorials on the website rather than try to use the dApp for that. Okay.
Hi, so I have a new question. So to what extent is it accurate to say that you are creating these assets and maintaining their pegs in much the same way that Maker is maintaining the peg between DAI and USD?
Great question. I know we don't have a ton of time, so I'll do a high-level answer. I think there are probably 3 main differences. One is that Maker is trying to create a perpetual product. So DAI is a perpetual stablecoin, right? While our tokens are expiring. The second is that in Maker system, the tokens are very fungible. So if you create a CDP and you borrow DAI from it, you can use that same DAI to close out someone else's CDP. In our structure, you can't do that. It's non-fungible. So you can only use the tokens that were borrowed from your facility to close out your own facility. And the last is that Maker has a very specific, well, I guess moving to multi-collateral DAI, it's very different, but they have a very specific price feed that they're trying to target, which is ETH/USD, whereas I think our system is trying to be more general and use an Oracle solution to allow you to create tokens that track anything.
With your example you created the Tesla, what about, could you talk about a little bit the scenarios, what happens when Tesla's doubled and you're going out to close? Just wondered, what happens in those 2 cases? What happens if Tesla's halved at the end of that, or what's doubled?
Perfect. So let me go back to that diagram then. This one, right? Okay, so let's say we started out in the good case, right? Because when we're initializing this token facility, I can always require in the dApp that you have everything in the good case. And let's say that you're saying at expiry, right?
Yeah,
At expiry, let's say that the price of Tesla has doubled. Then what should happen is over the lifetime of that token facility, hopefully the token sponsor has been incrementally topping up or withdrawing margin as needed. And so if they sold the token, the synthetic token, when the price of Tesla was 300 and it went to 600, at expiry, if I hold the token, I can redeem it for 600 and then
that was the bit that they're managing the collateralization ratio on their,
exactly, because they have the threat that if they don't, this penalty will be assessed and the whole trade gets terminated in the bad case. Great, awesome. Well, thanks for coming. Please feel free to drop by our desk table if you have any more questions, and we look forward to seeing what you build. Oh, sure, yeah. I can put this in, I'll put it in the Discord channel for UMA. Okay, thanks.